Peace and blessings to you. Peace and blessings to you and your whole household, your family, your son, your daughter, your wife, your husband, whoever you are. I hope you're great. I hope you're doing wonderful today. And we have another one today. And we will be looking at Exodus chapter 23, verses 1 through 9. And I just named this one Integrity and Righteousness because when I looked at it, that is all I saw was integrity and righteousness. So I named it Integrity and Righteousness. Exodus 23, verses 1 through 9. And we will be starting in verse 1. So follow along if you desire to. Like, share, and subscribe, that others may hear the Father's words and we give him all the glory for his wisdom. Verse 1 says, "You shall not circulate a false report. Do not put your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness." So it says you should not circulate a false report. We know something that circulates is something that is going around. Right? You should not circulate a false report, a lying testimony, basically a false report. Do not put your hand with. When you put your hand with anyone, you are joined, right? You are joined with that person. Do not put your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness, right? A witness is basically someone who testifies. So we're going to look at some, precepts to back up this verse. If we go to the book of Proverbs, chapter 24, verse 28, it says, "Do not be a witness against your neighbor without cause, for would you deceive with your lips?" So it says, do not be a witness against your neighbor without cause. I know somewhere in the Proverbs it says, "It is folly and shame for a man to answer a matter before he hears it." So it is folly and shame, or it is foolishness for a man to answer a matter before he hears it. If you have something to say to me and I'm just quick to cut you off, I don't want to hear your words, and I have my own opinion, or I'm hearing you, but hearing you to answer, right? And not just hearing you to hear what you have to say, and I'm just so quick. That's foolish of me to do that without hearing you out, because you could be right and I could be wrong the whole time, right? And the Father could be trying to bless me through you. Right? So it's folly and it's shame to answer a matter before you hear it. Right? So when it says that in Proverbs 24, verse 28, "Do not be a witness against your neighbor without cause, for would you deceive with your lips?" Being a witness against your neighbor without a cause. Not knowing, but just being against that man or that woman without a cause. No reason for it. Right? Just a precept, I guess, for this verse. In Exodus 23, verse 1, "You shall not circulate a false report. Do not put your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness." And we're going to look at an example of this in the book of Acts to Mr. Stephen. Acts chapter 6, reading from verse 11 through 13. This is about Stephen. I'll just start from verse 8, Acts chapter 6. It says, "And Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and signs among the people. Then there arose some from what is called the synagogue of the freedmen, Cyrenians, Alexandrians, and those from Sicily and Asia, disputing with Stephen, and they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spoke. Then they secretly induced men to say, 'We have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses and Elohim.' And they stirred up the people, the elders and the scribes, and they came upon him, seized him, and brought him to the council. They also set up false witnesses who said, 'This man does not cease to speak blasphemous words against this holy place,' or this set apart place, 'and the Torah,' and the law." So you see in verse 13, it says they set up false witnesses. And of course, we know, as we just read even a little bit of the context, that this was a man full of faith, full of power. He did great wonders and signs among the people, right? And they couldn't resist the wisdom by which he spoke. Speaking of Stephen right here, they didn't like Stephen. They were probably envious or jealous of Stephen. And they brought forth a false report. He's speaking about this place and against the law when that's not what he was doing, right? You should not circulate a false report. Do not put your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. They were being an unrighteous witness right there, right? So let's go to verse 2, Exodus 23, verse 2. You should not follow a crowd to do evil, nor shall you testify in a dispute, so as to turn aside after many to pervert justice. So we can see even in this first line, this is a powerful line in itself. You should not follow a crowd to do evil. You should not follow a multitude to do evil, right? This is one of the verses that just stood out to me about being integral or having integrity, that's very righteous. You should not follow a crowd to do evil, standing on our convictions, standing on those things which we're convicted about. If we know the Father says this, then we do that. If we know the Father says don't do this, we don't do that. What if they do it? Or what if they do it? What if they do it? What are we going to do, right? As Joshua said in Joshua 24, as for me and my house. He even separates himself from those in his house. As for me and my house, we are going to serve Yah. As for me and for my house, we're going to serve Yah. You should not follow a crowd to do evil, right? We don't need to be influenced by this worldly influence that's in this world, because most of the world is doing evil. And we don't need to follow a crowd, a multitude of people to do evil, because they are more than us physically. But we know the angels are with us, as it says in the scriptures. You should not follow a crowd to do evil. Let's look at some verses about this. If we go to the book of Proverbs, we should not follow a crowd to do evil. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 10, 11, and verse 15. Proverbs chapter 1, starting in verse 10, it says, my son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait to shed blood. Let us lurk secretly to the innocent without cause. I'll just read through 2:15. Let us swallow them alive like Sheol, and whole like those who go down to the pit. We shall find all kinds of precious possessions. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Cast in your lot among us. Let us all have one purse. Verse 15, my son, do not walk in the way with them. Keep your foot from the path. Keep your foot from their path, right? Don't follow a multitude to do evil, right? Let's go this way. Let's go this way. But while you're going that way, they're going this way. Never follow a multitude to do evil. And when you really look at it in life, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times where you see the multitude there, or where you see all the people in the direction they're going to, that's not the right way. It's not the right way. It's even in the faith that we're in. We see a multitude of people not going the way that we're going in. You know, the revelation that the Father is pouring out in the world concerning his law, his instructions, right? We are few who are walking this path, right? But we know this is the way, this is the truth, and this is the life. This is the way. We don't need to follow a multitude to do evil. Let's look at Eliyahu, in 1 Kings chapter 19. 1 Kings chapter 19, what did he say? What did Elijah say? 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 10. Verse 9 and 10. 1 Kings chapter 19, 9 and 10, it says, and there he went into a cave, speaking of Elijah, and spent the night in that place, and behold, the word of Yahweh came to him, and he said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? So he said, I have been very zealous for Yah, Elohim of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life. So we know he ran from Jezebel, but even the type of man Elijah was, he was willing to stand alone if he was going to stand with the Father. He was willing to, right? As he even said, I am alone, which we know the Father said, I have 7,000 who have not bowed the knee, right? In this idolatrous type thing. But we see the character, this integrity, and this righteousness that this man Elijah had. He was willing to walk alone. He was not willing to walk with the evil. He was not willing to walk with the crowd. We know the prophets of Baal were 450 men, and you have Elijah standing his ground, right? Holding the line, standing for what the Father says, standing for the truth, right? Be strong and mighty for the truth, and Yah will fight for you. Let's look at verse 3. It says, you should not show partiality to the poor in his dispute. Exodus 23, verse 3. You should not show partiality to the poor in his dispute, right? So we shouldn't be partial in our judgment or in our the things that we do, the things that we say, how we do things. As the Messiah said, judge righteous judgment. You should not show partiality to a poor man in his dispute. In his dispute, we shouldn't be partial. If we look at James chapter 2, verse 9, in James chapter 2, the scripture says, but if you show partiality, you commit sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. By showing partiality, right? That's a heavy statement right here. That James just said we're convicted by the law as transgressors, which we know the scriptures it says that. Why did James say if we show partiality? Let me read that one more time. James 2, verse 9. But if you show partiality, you commit sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. Why did James say such a thing? Why did James say such a thing? Because when you go and you look at Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 17, it says you should not show partiality in judgment, right? You should hear the small as well as the great. You should not be afraid of any man's presence, panim, his face, for the judgment is Elohim's. But you see that in Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 17, it also says you should not show partiality in judgment. So James is only pulling from the only text that he has in this time. There's no New Testament when New Testament when James is speaking. All they have is the Old Testament, or the Torah and the prophets, the law and the prophets, and the rest of the writings that we find in what is called the Old Testament. So when he says that in James chapter 2, verse 9, but if you show partiality, if you're partial in your judgment, you commit sin and are convicted, because we're convicted of what? Sin, and are convicted by the law. Sin is transgression of the law, and are convicted by the law as transgressors, right? By showing partiality. So we don't need to do that to see what that is. What does this mean, to show partiality? That's not something we should do. To a poor man in his dispute, we should judge righteously, right? Verse 4 and 5 in Exodus 23, we're going to put those together because they go together. Verse 4 and 5 in Exodus 23, it says, if you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you shall surely bring it back to him again. If you see the donkey of one who hates you lying under its burden, and you would not refrain from helping it, you shall surely help him with it. So right here we see, if you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you shall surely bring it back. You shall surely, verily, truly, you shall bring it back to him again. If you see the donkey of one who hates you lying under its burden, and you would not refrain from helping it, you shall surely help him with it. Right? What would this do if our enemy was doing this? His donkey was going astray, and we brought it back to him. What does that do? That fosters reconciliation. That fosters us coming back into the alignment with one another. That fosters love. That fosters forgiveness. I think this is a beautiful command. If you meet your enemy's ox and his donkey going astray, you shall surely bring it back to him again. If you see the donkey of one who hates you lying under his burden, don't walk off and say, well, that's his, I'm going to leave it right there. No, we go get it, and by going to get it, we bring it back to our neighbor, and by his grace, this is something that can foster forgiveness, this reconciliation between brethren, right, or sisters. We shall surely help them. And as the Messiah said, right, in Matthew chapter 5, verse 44, love your enemies. And as Paul said in Romans 12, of course, the vengeance is Yah's. He will repay. We are to do good to all men, especially those of the household of faith. Paul says that, Galatians 6, do good to all men, especially those of the household of faith, right? Even to our enemies. This isn't something that just the Messiah said in Matthew 5:44. That's the, as a brother of mine says, the excellent way or the higher way to love our enemies and to do good to those who hate us. As Yahushua said that in Matthew 5:44. But if we look at Proverbs chapter 24, verse 17, Proverbs 24, verse 17 and 18, it says, do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest Yahweh see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. So this is interesting right here. In Proverbs 24, verse 17 and 18, it says, do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles. So we're not supposed to rejoice when our enemy falls, right? And not let our heart be glad when he stumbles. Verse 18, lest Yahweh see it and it displeases him. So it can displease the Father by seeing our enemies fall and we're laughing at them. I'm glad that happened to you. I'm glad that came upon you. You did this to me. I'm glad it happened to you. That can displease the Father. And he turned away his wrath from him. So the Father is the one who executes judgment. The Father is the one who corrects, rebukes men and women on our behalf. If he's going to do it, he's going to do it himself. We don't have to laugh at the people. We don't have to mock when these things are happening to our enemies. Verse 17 again, do not rejoice when your enemy falls. And do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest Yah see it and it displease him and he turn away his wrath from him. So the Father will stop the chastisement to that man or that woman if we're laughing and we're boasting like, aha, look at what's happening to you. He can turn away from it. But by us doing this, and it displeases Yah to do that to our enemies, right? Vengeance is his. He'll repay. It's written. Let's look at verse 6 now. Exodus 23. You should not pervert the judgment of the poor in his dispute. You should not pervert or change or twist the judgment of the poor in his dispute. Right? And we kind of just read that a little bit briefly. In Deuteronomy 1 verse 17, it says, you should not show partiality in judgment. You shall hear the small as well as the great. You should not be afraid of any man's presence, for the judgment is Elohim's. Right? You should not pervert or twist the judgment. Twist the justice of the poor in his dispute. Don't twist it. Don't show partiality. Don't be showing favoritism, as it were. Right? Verse 7, Exodus 23. Keep yourself far from a false matter, a lying matter. Do not kill the innocent and righteous, for I will not justify the wicked. All right, so verse 7, it says, keep yourself from a false matter. False is basically a lie. The word matter, I think, is devar. In Strong's, it is H1697. And it means word, advice, business, or counsel. So the scripture is saying in Exodus 23, verse 7, keep yourself far from a false word. Keep yourself far from false advice. Keep yourself far from false business. Keep yourself far from a false word and false counsel. Right? This is integrity. This is righteousness. This is righteous living. This is a sanctified life. This is sanctification. Indeed, keep yourself from a false word, advice, business, and counsel. Right? This is all walking in and showing integrity in our everyday life. Everyday life, because we're going to get into situations to where we're going to hear false words. We're going to get false advice. We don't have to receive it. False business and counsel. Right? We can get the words, of course, from men and women, but we don't have to apply it when we get it. It made me think of Psalm 1, verse 1. Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly. Right? People have wisdom. Believers have wisdom. Unbelievers have wisdom as well. But if they're leading us in a way that's not right, right, we shouldn't follow that. We can get wisdom from pretty much anybody. But if I'm going to seek counsel from anybody, I'm going to go to one of my brothers, one of my brethren in the faith. I'm going to go to an elder, as it were. I'm going to go to somebody who knows Yah, who is filled with the Ruach of the Most High, who will answer me not according to what I want to hear. When I ask counsel, he's going to answer me according to the word, right? He's going to answer me according to wisdom, right? So keep yourself far from a false matter, a false word, false advice, false business, false counsel, right? Colossians 3 verse 9 says, and lie not one to another. We have to keep ourselves far from a false matter. And then the end of that verse says, do not kill the innocent and righteous, for I will not justify the wicked. Going into verse 8, it says, you shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the discerning, or the wise mind, or the wise. For the bribe blinds the discerning and perverts the words of the righteous. You should not take a bribe. We're not to be paid or bribed to do that which is not right in Yah's eyes. You should not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the discerning or the wise, the discerning mind, the discerning man, and perverts the words of the righteous, because that wise man or that righteous man, or that man, he will pervert his words or pervert his actions due to this bribe, if this is something that he's into or she's into, right? If we go to the book of 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 1 through 3. You should not take a bribe. You shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the discerning and perverts the words of the righteous. Don't preach that. Don't teach on that. You can speak on this. You can come to my church if you say that. But don't talk about that. Nah. Anybody who's going to be used of the Father in deed and in truth, you cannot be bridled. You will not be able to be bridled. You have to say whatever he reveals to you to say, whatever he tells you to say. As we look at the prophets in the scriptures, he says, when Jeremiah didn't want to speak, he said, I'm a child, I can't speak. Say not that I'm a child. The Father says, you shall speak all that I command you. You should speak all that I command you. We know when the word truly comes from one of the Yah's messengers, it's going to be words of encouragement, words of comfort, words of rebuke, words of correction, right? Words of judgment. We know what the scriptures say. We know exactly what they say. If we're reading, we know exactly what they say. But yeah, we can't be bribed. We can't be bribed. You shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the discerning, or it blinds the wise and perverts the words of the righteous. 1 Samuel chapter 8, 1 through 3. It says, now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of the firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second, Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. Verse 3. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. That's the result. The perverting of justice, or the perverting of doing what's right. The oppression upon the poor, the oppression upon the widow and the stranger. That's a result of the dishonest gain and the taking of bribes, right? We have to walk in integrity. This is why I call this study by his grace, integrity and righteousness. This is how we should walk, right? And just because whether our family follows the Father or not, or if our family does not follow him, if they did, or if your mom or if your dad, if they were righteous men, or if they are righteous men, that has nothing to do with us. As we see, we know Samuel was a prophet of the Most High, right? Whenever Samuel would come, they were like, is everything well? Because they knew whenever he would speak, his words, as it says in 1 Samuel 3, did not hit the ground. Whatever Samuel said, his word was coming to pass, right? Samuel was a righteous man. He was a righteous judge, a leader, right? But it says in verse 3, but his sons did not walk in his ways, right? Showing that every man's walk is his walk. Every man and every woman has to confess for themselves, repent for themselves, believe for themselves, obey for themselves, have faith for themselves. Right? We need the family unit. The family unit is where everything starts. Indeed, if we're blessed enough to have that growing up, or blessed enough to have it, even now. But even then, that man or that woman needs their own faith with the Father. Their own faith. Because Samuel's sons, Samuel being a righteous man, his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. All right. So let's go to Proverbs chapter 17, verse 23. Proverbs 17, verse 23. Proverbs chapter 17, verse 23, it says, a wicked man accepts a bribe behind the back and pervert the ways of justice. It says a wicked man. The taking of bribes is attributed to the wicked. Proverbs 17, verse 23, a wicked man accepts a bribe behind the back to pervert the ways of justice. All right, let's go to verse 9 now as we're about to close out. Verse 9 says, you shall not oppress. You shall not oppress or afflict a stranger. For you know the heart of a stranger, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Right? What is a stranger? In the Strong's H1616, a guest, a foreigner, or just a stranger. So this is what the Father was telling them. Also, you shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the heart of a stranger, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And when we look at the mercy of the Father in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 18 and 19, it says, he administers, speaking of Yah, he administers justice for the fatherless and the widow, and loves the stranger, giving him food and clothing. Therefore, love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Right? Love ye therefore, or love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You should not oppress a stranger, for you know the heart of a stranger, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Right? So yes, Exodus 23, verses 1 through 9. This is what integrity looks like. This is what righteousness looks like. So I pray that the Father causes us to walk in his ways by the Ruach HaKodesh, his spirit to walk in his ways. These are the statutes and the judgments. Remember ye therefore the law of Moses with the statutes and judgments. Malachi verse 4 and 4, I think. 4 through 6. Malachi 4, verse 4 through 6. Remember ye therefore the law of Moses with the statutes and judgments. And when the Messiah came, when you look at Matthew chapter 5 through Matthew chapter 7, indeed, they are statutes and judgments. Remember ye therefore the law of Moses with its statutes and judgments. As we're looking at those through Exodus 23, 1 through 9, when the Messiah came on the scene, he in Matthew chapter 5 through Matthew chapter 7, indeed, they are all statutes and judgments, showing the validity of YAH'S law. And everything we looked at just here truly applies to us today, and we can see all these same principles in what is called the New Testament. Right? So I really hope this study blessed you. I do. Like and share, send it to somebody if you desire. And I pray it blessed you, and you have a great rest of your day. Shalom.